Hey guys, alright? Welcome everyone. A group of hunters is seen at night in the midst of a hunt, killing some animals. After they store their carcasses, one of the men hears screams from his companions nearby. He goes to check what it is and finds a man severely injured with deep claw marks on his neck. The frightened man then runs but ends up falling into a trap with no chance of escape, as a large beast appears and kills him. Soon, we meet a man named Dr. Nate Samuels, who was on a flight in South Africa with his daughters, Nora and Meredith. After landing in Mopane, Africa, they wait for their ride, a man named Martin, who was a friend of Dr. Nate since their youth. Once inside the car, he tells the girls that he was the one who introduced their mother to Nate at the end of college. They arrive at his house. Nate has brought the girls to Africa to show them the savannah and a bit of their mother's work. Mare sees a photo on the wall of her pregnant mother, Amahai, and another photo where she was near a tree, where Amahai used to look and take various photographs. At dinner, Mare shows Martin some photos she took, which piques his interest in her talent. However, she is upset with Nate for not paying much attention to it. Mare also blames him for her mother's death, thinking that the divorce process made her sick and ultimately led to her demise. But Nate says that he and their mother mutually agreed to separate and that she fell ill afterward. Nora, upset by the conversation, leaves the table. When he gets up to follow her, Mare apologizes for the topic discussed in front of Nora and goes to talk to her. Later, Nate and Martin celebrate their reunion, but Nate asks why Martin didn't attend his wife's funeral. Martin says he didn't have the courage because he was deeply saddened and didn't think it appropriate to see his deceased friend. Nate laments the end of his marriage and the losses he's suffered. He lost his wife, and now Mare was beginning to resent him for his actions, and little Nora was following the same path. He also regrets that as a doctor, he couldn't detect his wife's cancer when she needed him the most. She got sick, and he wasn't there when she passed away. So, to keep the children from losing him too, he decided to do something different, which is why they are there. In the morning, Martin takes them on a tour of the reserve to see some beautiful animals. The girls are fascinated by the beauty of nature, such as antelopes and giraffes, among other animals. As they approach an old school for the local natives, they encounter a man in the savannah named Banji, who is responsible for tracking a lion family in the reserve. Mare takes some photos, and little Nora gets scared by the roar of one of the lions. Martin reassures them, explaining that the lionesses hunt while the males, Kuda and his brother Kaw, protect the group from other lions. Martin then goes to the pride, where Banji gradually approaches the lions. Mare accompanies him to take some photos, showing no fear. Martin approaches the lions, whom he has cared for since they were cubs. The lions receive him well, but he notices something is wrong with one of the lionesses named Nandi. As he gets closer, he sees that one of her paws is injured, and it annoys her, preventing Martin from getting any closer. One of the brothers signals for him to leave, and understanding that, Martin departs. Speaking to Banji, he suspects the injury might be from a gunshot, as illegal hunters have been targeting lions for their teeth, claws, and even bones, which have significant value in the black market. Continuing their journey, they don't notice a car off the road, where large birds are feasting on what appears to be the remains of the hunters we saw at the beginning of the movie. Arriving at the Tsonga village, they realize that it's eerily quiet, and despite searching, no one appears. Nate asks Martin to leave, but before that, he calls him into one of the huts to see something. When he sees the scene, he becomes very concerned and asks the girls not to enter. Upon entering the hut, he observes the villagers lying dead, and Martin suggests it might have been a lion. This startles Nate because such a massacre by lions had never occurred before. Worried about what happened, Martin mentions that the area should have been full of hyenas, but since they're not present, they suspect that whatever caused this might still be nearby. Martin goes to fetch his gun, and Nate does the same for the girls. However, Nora sneaks out, and Mare doesn't notice. They go after Nora, fearing for her safety. It's a tense moment for Nate as he searches for his younger daughter, and then he hears a scream. He rushes towards the sound, and fortunately, she's okay, but they find two more bodies at the scene. With everyone back in the car, Martin attempts to contact Banji about the incident, but there's no signal. They decide to head to an outpost 6 kilometers away. Along the way, they come across an injured villager. Nate, being a doctor, offers help, and the wounded man says it was the devil who did this. Meanwhile, Martin hears something in the woods and investigates. Nate goes back to the car to get a medical kit and instructs the girls to try to contact someone on the radio. Returning to the wounded man to tend to him, he attempts to revive him. Martin, with his rifle, is still searching for the beast, following its tracks. The atmosphere becomes increasingly tense as he reaches a lake inhabited by crocodiles. Martin continues to follow the tracks, indicating that the creature entered the water, and then he hears a roar. Determined to find the creature, he enters the water for a better view, but something surprises him from behind and attacks. Nate hears Martin scream and a gunshot. Worried about what might have happened, he begins calling for Martin and trying to locate him. Concerned for their father, Mare decides to leave the car to look for him. Not far from the car, Nate, while calling for Martin, spots the creature approaching. Startled, he runs back towards the car, almost getting caught by the large and fierce lion. The beast climbs onto the car, terrifying them all. Unaware that one of the windows is open, Mare nearly gets grabbed by the lion's claws, but Nate saves her and starts kicking the creature. In desperation, Mare decides to start the car and drives it away. After managing to free her father, who was almost losing his legs as he pushed the lion off the car, Mare, still in a state of panic and unable to drive, accidentally crashes the car into a tree at the edge of a slope. Nate tries to comfort his daughters in the midst of this terrifying situation. He attempts to start the car again, but it doesn't work, which causes the girls to panic. To reassure them, he says they'll get out of this situation. Nate hears someone calling on the radio and discovers it's Martin, who is still alive but severely injured. He explains what happened, mentioning that the lion left him unable to walk and that he's almost passing out. Nate tries to help his friend using some survival methods, and because Martin is losing a lot of blood, Nate asks him to heat a knife and seal the artery by burning it. Martin screams in pain, and Nate, hearing his cries, realizes they are close to each other. Nate decides to go to him, but Martin tells him that he's not alone, saying that the lion is looking at him and getting closer. Determined not to let his friend die, Nate grabs one of the tranquilizer guns from the car and starts assembling it. He talks to Martin, who is weakened by blood loss, and learns that the lion is no longer with him. It left, and Martin doesn't know where it went, so he asks them to stay in the car. However, thinking he now has a chance to put the lion to sleep, Nate climbs on top of the car with the rifle to get a better view of the area. Martin suggests he looks for any movement or shadows. Nate sees some animals nearby but no sign of the lion. He asks Martin for a reference point to where he was, and Martin tells him to look for the hunter's hideout, a cabin built above the ground and in the trees. Thinking that they were taking too long and fearing that Martin would die, Mare has the foolish idea to go after him. Nate, seeing her leave, asks her to come back, but she refuses. Suddenly, Nora sees the lion approaching them from behind and desperately tries to warn them. Mare runs towards where she was already heading, and the beast goes after Nate, who unfortunately misses the dart at it. Nate is attacked, falls to the ground, and doesn't get a chance to take another shot. He protects himself beneath the car from the brutal bites of the beast. The lion keeps trying to get to him, but Nate kicks it to prevent being dragged and killed. The lion is quite clever and jumps over the car, indicating that it wants to leave the area. However, when Nate finally manages to grab the weapon, the lion suddenly returns and attacks again, almost catching him. Mare manages to reach Martin to try to help him. Meanwhile, in the car, Nate can't get out from underneath it because the lion is still nearby, attacking him whenever he tries to escape. At a certain point, Nora, being smart, takes advantage of the fact that the lion is busy attacking and manually injects a tranquilizer into the lion. The lion immediately feels the effects of the tranquilizer and starts to get drowsy, eventually leaving the area. Taking advantage of the moment, Mare brings Martin to the car, where Dr. Nate quickly tends to his wounds. With the help of the girls, he stitches up Martin's injuries. However, they are soon surprised by the lion, which approaches them. It seems that the effects of the tranquilizer have worn off. They see the lion moving in another direction, but they realize they will have to spend the night there because they can't leave. When Martin wakes up, he asks how they are. Nate says they're okay, and as for the lion, he hasn't seen it since sunset. Martin explains that a wounded lion is dangerous, but the situation is unusual. The lion attacked a village, killed people, but didn't eat them. Also, attacking a car is not common behavior for this species. Martin deduces that the lions are reacting to the attacks by the hunters who kill the lion families. This is why the lions have started attacking people. Martin believes the lion had its family killed by the hunters and is now seeking revenge. Nate says they need to leave with his daughters, but Martin argues that without a weapon, they can't fight a lion, and outside, the odds are in favor of the lion. During the night, while talking to Mare, Nate apologizes. Suddenly, they hear voices on the radio and realize that help is nearby. When they arrive at the scene, Nate realizes they are hunters. He approaches them and tells them they were attacked by a lion. The hunters discover that it was the alpha male lion who fled the previous night's attack. Nate asks for their help and offers them American dollars. They agree to help, but when they check who's inside the car, they discover it's Martin, the reserve defender against the hunters. This angers them, and they threaten Nate, claiming that Martin killed 3 of the hunters. The situation becomes even more dramatic when the hunters grab Nate's daughters. Nate tries to intervene but is hit by one of the men and can't do anything. However, the hunters are not the real problem. It's the lion that didn't leave the area and that suddenly appears out of nowhere attacking one of the hunters. While Nate returns to the car, the hunters shoot in the lion's direction. Taking advantage of the hunters being distracted, Nate attempts to steal one of their cars, but he can't find the keys. He decides to search for the keys and tells the girls he'll be back in about 10 minutes. While searching for the man who likely has the keys, Nate encounters a dead body along the way but doesn't find the keys. As he continues through the forest, he hears moans nearby and, getting closer, finds a wounded man, but the keys aren't with him either. Continuing his search, Nate spots the lion and hides. At that moment, Mare calls him on the radio, which attracts the lion. To avoid revealing his location to the lion, he drops the radio, and the girls continue calling for their father. However, all they hear is the lion. After the lion sniffs the radio and moves away, Nate manages to hide in a tree. When a snake approaches him, Nate grabs it and throws it towards the lion, scaring it off in another direction. Nate, continuing his search, wades through the water to avoid being seen. However, he's once again forced to hide from the lion, which almost detects him and begins to sniff the area, on the verge of finding him there. Meanwhile, inside the car, the girls become worried when their father doesn't respond to them, so they start honking the horn. Fortunately, the sound attracts the lion's attention and gives Nate a chance to get out. He finally finds the man with the keys and quickly retrieves them, also taking one of the guns. The lion arrives, scaring the girls, and Martin tries to calm them, instructing them not to look into its eyes and to stay away from the windows. The lion then retreats but charges at them again, injuring Mare in the process. Martin, with his extensive experience dealing with large felines, manages to hold it off for a moment while the girls escape through the rear door. Due to the lion's weight and the swaying of the car, it tumbles down a slope with Martin inside. The lion recovers from the fall and circles the car. Unfortunately, Martin, who is severely wounded and has no chance of escaping the situation, realizes that the car's fuel is leaking and the lion is about to enter the vehicle to attack him. In a desperate move, he decides to sacrifice himself and ignites his lighter, causing an explosion that engulfs everything in flames. When Nate returns, he sees the fire, and the girls inform him of what happened. Nate, noticing Mare's injuries, instructs her to apply pressure to the wound and then goes to check on the car where Martin was. Seeing the destruction, he mourns the loss of his friend. In the morning, still lost, Nate tries to find a way back home. Nora spots the group of lions that Banji showed them the day before. Nate remembers there's an abandoned school nearby and decides to head there. Inside, he looks for something to use as a bandage and discovers that the place is now a camp for the hunters. After tending to Mare's wounds, Nate goes out to search for supplies. Unbeknownst to him, a lion approaches, and he doesn't notice it. The lion heads toward the girls, who hide upon spotting it. Meanwhile, Nate finds a radio and tries to call for help. The girls start screaming for their father, which quickly alerts the lion. Nate rushes to their aid and shoots at the lion, but he soon runs out of bullets. The lion is wounded but not defeated. Nate takes the girls to a room with bars on the windows and instructs them to keep the door locked. After assuring them that he'll try to do something, he leaves. After a while, Nate hears the lion's roar. He approaches the room where the girls are, but when he gets close, he decides to lure the lion away. The lion starts chasing Nate through the field. Nate knows he can't outrun it, so he decides to face the lion. The lion tackles him to the ground and bites him ferociously. Nate tries to punch it, but it's not very effective. The lion bites Nate's leg several times. Eventually, Nate manages to hit the lion with a piece of wood, but the lion quickly recovers and attacks again. Nearby, the family of lions that Banji showed them the previous day watches the fight. Nate continues to fight with a knife, but despite injuring the lion, it's not enough to kill it, as he can't land a fatal blow. The lion becomes even more enraged. In the lion's final attack, it's about to bite Nate's head when suddenly, the two alpha male lions of the pride intervene, attacking the lion that had entered their territory. They save Nate just in time from certain death. Nate, severely injured and covered in bite wounds, finds a fallen tree trunk and waits as the two alpha lions finish off the intruder. Thankfully, Nate survives the ordeal. Banji and some reserve guards arrive and tranquilize the lions and Nate faints. Later, he wakes up in the hospital, relieved to reunite with his daughters, who are safe. The movie ends with Nate and his daughters returning to the location where their mother took a memorable photo, under a large tree filled with birds. They recreate the photograph and demonstrate their renewed unity and happiness as a family.